Welcome to episode 69 of Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is Charlie, and it's Independence Day. Jacob and Desma are taking a long weekend off. I hope you had a good holiday. And if I could channel my inner Bill Pullman, I'd give you like a Independence Day type of speech. And you could just imagine yourself that instead of fighting the aliens, you were taking on Kratom. So today, Jacob has an interview. He's one of those guys that is very disciplined, has a routine, is very driven. And there's some types of folks that get hooked on Kratom that are like that. And almost that drive that they have is part of an extension of their addiction. And the standard suggestion of go out there and exercise, get out of the house, get your body moving. That type of advice doesn't work for them. And then we'll wrap up the episode with me talking to Rami about a new meeting that's taking place. And if you're listening to this on the day that this episode drops on Sunday, July 7th, there's going to be a meeting tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern. And there'll be a link in the show notes. So in the open today, I just wanted to listen to a voicemail from Gabriel. He gave a couple voicemails, and let's take a listen.
Hey, Charlie, this is Gabriel. I'm 38 years old. I live in Tennessee. I've been struggling with Kratom addiction. Just started a podcast earlier today. Listened to a couple episodes. Really enjoyed it. So just thank you for creating that. I've been working all day, so as soon as I get home and I have a moment, I'll jump on the subreddit. Quick history of my experience with Kratom. Been using it since January of 2023. Sounds like it's a typical thing. It seemed innocuous at first. Had a couple feel frees at a party. Somebody was making little mocktails with them. Caught my interest. Enjoyed it, but didn't really think much of it. Although, looking back, it was like a little spark that has now turned into more of a fire. And a couple of months randomly out of the blue, I was like near the store, and I saw they had the little sticker that said "Feel free sold here" on the window, and so I walked in, grabbed a couple, and it basically progressed from there. Turned into a couple on the weekend to starting on Thursday, ending on Monday, then into a daily habit. Mostly all with feel free, but there's been instances where I go wild and go on a little bit of a bender. I should also mention I'm nearly 6 years sober from alcohol, so I definitely have a fair amount of experience with addiction, with recovery. Obviously, I'm a bit angry that I found myself in this position. Scared between my wife and I, with her having weathered a good bit of my alcohol abuse. She's supportive, but also I think it's very triggering for her as well.
All right, Gabriel, thanks for calling in. It's good to hear your voice. I connected him with the WhatsApp group for quitting Feel Free. And if you're needing some more support, contact any of the hosts on social media. Connect with us through any of the means listed in the show notes. And there's all these different chats that have popped up. Many people find them very helpful. Now it's time for the interview. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. We are live. This is Jacob, and I'm here today with our guest, Cody. How would you introduce yourself to the listeners?
That's a great question. I'd probably introduce myself differently depending on who asked, but for you guys, the listeners, combat vet, did 9 years active military for the Navy, during which time I was abusing drugs at that time as well. We can talk a little bit about that. I went to work for various government agencies, National Security Agency, Department of Defense, doing things like threat intelligence, cybersecurity architect. So I designed security systems for the government and military, also commercial spaces as well. And I live in Montana and enjoy the outdoors quite a bit and enjoy the snow quite a bit. Anything affiliated with the mountains and water, I probably do it. So that's a short and sweet description of myself.
Nice. And thank you for your service as well. Are you a skier or a snowboarder?
Yeah, skiing. Snowboarding is a dirty word, so we won't use that.
Okay. We won't go into that topic then. Cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I haven't made it to Montana. I've been to a number of Western states, but someday I would like to get out there. I'd like to go to Big Sky and a couple other places. Outside of that, any other hobbies you want to mention?
Avid reader, read quite a bit.
Anything else you'd like to do?
Other than that, no. Cybersecurity is a big part of my life. It's something I do that not only pays the bills, but I do it for fun as well. So I've been doing that for well over 2 decades. So that's a big part of my personality as well.
Cool. Why don't we just get right into it then? Rather than starting with your kind of history of just Kratom usage and that, why don't we go all the way back and talk about your history and your experience with substances in general?
So my history started at the age of 12. I'm what's called a polyaddict. I guess there's different terms for it. Essentially, one that's been addicted to many types of drugs over the years. I came from a family members that were all drug addicts. I call her my mother. I call her my father. They don't deserve that title, though. They weren't actual mothers and fathers. They were people who brought me into this earth, so they don't deserve the title of having that. But the people who brought me into this earth were drug addicts. My mom was at a young age. She met someone who had just gotten back from serving time in the Vietnam War in the early 70s. He was a heroin addict, and he impregnated my mother. My mother didn't want me to be in that environment. So by the age of 1, she took me away, and she ended up marrying somebody else who I thought was my real dad. Up until the age of 11, they sat me down and said that my stepdad was not my real dad, that my real dad was somebody else. And so 2 years later, I ended up going to live with him, which was odd. He was a methadone addict and a heroin addict. And my stepmom, who I lived with, she sold weed. She was actually a scientist working at the University of Texas in Galveston. So she had a really good job, but she was also abusing drugs, which all of my family members, they came from their upper middle class. They had money, but they were drug abusers, starting out with pills and alcohol and then getting into cocaine, crack, meth, stuff like that. But they always upheld that persona of upper privileged white middle class type of persona. But anyways, so that kind of started when I went to live with my father. That started my drug addictions. They smoked weed in front of me regularly. Naturally, I started to steal marijuana from them. Didn't know how to do it, but I remember the first time I did it, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was amazing. And my personality type is I live for adrenaline, and I enjoy just natural dopamines, either from natural things or from drug things. So that makes my addiction that much worse, because I can get high from natural things, but I also enjoy getting high from other substances as well. So they all play into each other. But being in that environment and just being exposed to people using drugs at a very young age, again, 6th, 7th grade, started smoking weed. And by that time, I think it was my 13th birthday, my dad asked me, do you want some money or do you want a quarter pound of weed? You can sell the weed and you can smoke it and do what you want and make more money. So of course, what are you going to do? You're going to start. I took the weed, of course. So
what a birthday gift.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the start of everything, because I was starting to play sports when I was staying with my mom, and I played sports up until freshman year, track, football, basketball, and I was running with that crowd, and I was actually pretty good at it. Unfortunately, I veered off, and then I went to the other crowd and started to get into psychedelics around 15, 16. Actually, the first time I did mushrooms was with my dad. He took me to a field in Galveston where we just happened to find some, walk upon some, and that was my first experience with psychedelics. And then a year later, we went to Mexico on a trip, and he showed me how to do peyote. That's my role models, showed me how to use drugs, but it went from there. And so really enjoyed psychedelics quite a bit, 15, 16, 17. And then around that age, I started to get into methamphetamines and cocaine. And so I was doing that in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, 12th grade. That was my drug of choice. And I've always been a worker. Doing drugs and substances and working, making money, always went hand in hand with me. I started working at a very young age, around the age of 7, working for my uncle, who owned a slew of houses in South Central Los Angeles. And so every summer I'd go stay with him, and I would do stuff associated with basic maintenance like painting and fence work, roofing, and then work my way up to foundational work and plumbing and electrical and all that good stuff. Started making money at a very young age. And by the time I was 15 and could work legally, I worked at Subway and Burger King while in high school, and I was doing meth, so it just went hand in hand. I was just work all day, go to school. I was making straight A's. I'm just one of those cheaper types. So even though I was doing a lot of drugs, I was still, from a normal societal standard, I was still being relatively playing within the lines. So went through that, the psychedelics, and then the amphetamines and cocaine. And then I'd always had an infatuation with opiates. And so I could never find a heroin dealer until I was about 19. And then by the time I was 20, I was a full-blown heroin addict. And I was living in Texas at the time and running with the wrong crowd. And so really the only way I could get away from that was to join the military. I had two choices. I was either going to keep going the route I was going and end up in prison or end up dead or try to do something with my life. So every time I tried to get clean from opiates, no matter which family member I went to live with, for anyone who's ever tried to get clean from drugs, if you live in a house or surrounded by people who are doing drugs, it's almost impossible to get clean. So I didn't really have a choice. I ended up selling all my stuff, getting a van and living on the streets of South Central Los Angeles, living on the streets of Venice Beach, living in a van trying to kick drugs, trying to kick heroin because I wanted to join the military, right? So that was my predicament. Anyways, I ended up joining the Navy, and I was actually going through fentanyl withdrawals while going into boot camp. Luckily, at the time, and this was the real fentanyl, not the garbage that Mexico and China make that comes over. This is pharmaceutical grade stuff. This was during the early 2000s when like the Oxycontin.
Back in the day when you could actually get real.
Yeah, the real stuff.
Back in
right?
the days when there was actually real opiates, versus whatever's out there now,
Yeah, what was I forget what, it wasn't Bayer. It was the one that got sued for billions of dollars for illegal marketing practices. But yeah, you go to the doctor with a headache and they give you a script of 180 milligram oxys, 1,000 of them, right? So everybody's getting strung out on them. So it was real easy to get that stuff. And my aunt and uncle at the time were getting the max amount they could. Living in California, they had some medical issues, but they were getting fentanyl suckers, which I haven't seen those in a long time. But back in the day, they looked like suckers. They tasted like suckers, and they were fentanyl suckers. You eat one of those, and that would take out an elephant. And so they were just popping those all day. But I had to get away from that if I wanted to get clean. So anyways, when I went into boot camp, I was still withdrawing through fentanyl for a little bit and going through boot camp. Kicking opiates is never a fun thing for anybody who's done it. But that just gives you an idea of my drug addiction level. And so anyways, did the military thing. I ended up getting stationed in San Diego, where Tijuana was about 15 minutes away. And this was around 2005, where you could still go into Tijuana and without getting your head cut off. And so that's what we all did. We would go there and party, drink all night. I would dabble. Methamphetamine was really big, so I was really living on the edge. They have random drug tests in the military, and so only by the grace of God did I not get popped for failing a drug test, which I was pushing the lines quite a bit. And again, only through the grace of God did I not get kicked out because I was partying so much. But I started to develop my career, and that's when I really started to get into my profession of cybersecurity. And I ended up getting my college degrees. At the time, I was at National Security Agency, Hawaii, and the goal was to join the CIA. And so we would have recruiters come from the CIA, talk to us, and they said, you're going to want a college degree. So I got a degree in criminal administration and ended up not wanting to go the CIA path. So I got another degree in software engineering. And so when I got out of the military, I pursued that. So I ended up going to Silicon Valley and working for startups and doing that, all of which by that time I'm making six-figure incomes and I didn't have any debt. I didn't have anything like that. So all of my money, I was just partying and started to do a lot of ecstasy, started to get back into opiates again, drinking like a fish, drinking a lot and just partying a lot, doing a lot of coke and just living Silicon Valley lifestyle, living in that world. And did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then, I started to get clean. And during all of that time, I struggled with getting clean. I would get clean and then I would go back. And the problem with me is that I can quit a drug and then say heroin or meth and then go back to it a year later, do it one time, and then never want to do it again. Same thing with Kratom. And that's what makes it so bad is that I could quit. But you do it one time and not like a lot of other listeners who, if they do it one time, that's over. And then they're just doing it 6 times a day for the next 6 years again, or whatever the case is. But that doesn't really
It's
apply to me.
interesting. Yeah, that's a lot to go through. So you've got a pretty extensive background in
With
this
drug
type
use,
of
yeah.
thing. So it sounds like the early 30s-ish, you started to dabble into recovery. When did you ever get like clean and then start to do Kratom? How does Kratom come into the picture?
Yeah, I got clean a lot of different times over the years. My struggle with drugs started I'm 44 now. My struggle with drugs started when I was 12. Do the math. But I would, again, every single drug I become addicted
I'm 42,
to. I would get
so it's about the similar thing, yeah.
And then you get addicted to this, and then you go through the struggles with it. And Kratom was just another add to the list. Of course, my opiate mind, addictive
Remember
mind.
the game Whack-A-Mole?
My
Addiction
struggle,
Whack-A-Mole. You knock one down, one pops up.
that's exactly what it is. And so my struggle with Kratom, I heard about Kratom for years. Never had any interest in it. I placed it in that category of all those other herbal stuff that you could buy. The names are the spice and stuff like that. I grouped it into those categories, and I didn't have any desire to do any of that weird head shop shit. Like it just wasn't interesting me. But I was working so my Kratom story started in 2021. I had just gotten a new job. Out of Virginia, and it was around July of 2021. And I had done Kratom once or twice. I went straight to the OPMS shots. Like I was in a head shop. I was talking to the guy. I didn't do none of the powder, none of that stuff. I was like, oh, I've heard about these shots. Did they get you high? He's, oh yeah, they get you high. I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah, whatever. The guy's just trying to sell me some stuff. And then sure enough, I drank that. And then it hits me like a Mack truck. And I was like, the first 10 minutes is just like taking a couple Percocet. And you're like, okay, I know what this feeling is like. And then at least for me, that hangover, that come down is rough. Like you feel that good euphoric for about an hour. Like you're feeling like you popped a couple of perks, but then it's like that. You get the wobbles. At least for me, it's like that hardcore hangover where you feel dizzy. All you want to do is lay down or you're pretty much incapacitated. And so that's the kind of state it put me in. But it didn't matter because all I could focus on was that euphoric feeling, not the feeling like shit for the next 5 or 6 hours. And I would take one of those OPMS shots like during the day, and then I would feel it into the next day. I'd feel it in my body. That's how strong they are. And I weigh 255 pounds and I'm 6'4". So that just gives you an idea of the potency of these things.
Yeah, they're strong.
And I didn't really mess with the powder. I'm a pill person. I pop pills like crazy. It's impressive. I can swallow handfuls of pills, believe it or not. So I have no problem doing it. And
I have that skills too.
Not fathom drinking. I don't see how people who do Kratom can drink that swamp water 6-7 times a day. I just don't know how they do it. Just take the pills. But
I'll tell you how, if you want to know how, because I was an extract user too. It just got too expensive, so there was no other choice. And at that point, you're so stuck. But to just do it regularly, I don't know how people do it like out of the gate.
Yeah. I eventually worked my way up, of course. It's like any drug. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to get addicted to it just because that's how my addictive brain works. And again, I'm very much an adrenaline junkie. So I get high off natural stuff like just basic dopamine hits of cleaning the house or doing very mundane things that most people don't enjoy doing. I'll get a dopamine hit from it and I strive to do. I ended up working my way up to 2 or 3 ounces, essentially 70, 80, 90 grams easy. I'd wake up, do 15 grams easy, and then I would do another 5, 10 grams, and I would just continue doing that all day. And what I noticed about Kratom is that for me, Kratom's a really double-edged sword, and it's really bad in many different ways for me, in that it's almost like the repercussions of being addicted to Kratom for someone who's been addicted to heroin, someone who's been addicted to oxys, someone who's been who's kicked real opiates, who knows what it's like to kick methadone, go 2 or 3 weeks where you're crawling on the floor, crapping yourself, not being able to eat. Real detox, not to minimize Kratom detox, but on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst of real opiate detox versus Kratom detox, you're looking at a 2 or 3 max, at least for me. Like I can go 2 days and be fully physically good with the Kratom withdrawals. And then I'll deal with the anxiety and the depression and all that stuff for a few days as well. But you listen to some of the other people who's like, oh, I'm on day 97 and I'm still have restless leg syndrome and all that stuff. That doesn't apply to me. But then again, I'm in a different category because I've always had a very strict diet. I always eat very strict. I always go to the gym pretty hardcore 6 days a week. And I've done that for many years. A lot of the other Kratom people out there. And I've listened to all the testimonials for several years on YouTube. I listened to your stuff here. There all seems to be a common theme among a lot of the Kratom users. Usually when they start doing it, they're in a place where they're not like in the best place in life. Maybe they have a job or something, but they'll start using Kratom. And then from there, it just really goes downhill. Everything comes to a stop. Like all the stuff around them stops. They're already procrastinators. Maybe they're a little bit lazy to begin with. Not to demonize any of the listeners or anything. That's just a theme I've seen. And then once they start doing Kratom, everything comes to a hold. So then when they realize that they want to stop doing Kratom, they never had a good diet before. They never been to the gym once before. All of a sudden, now they're going to quit Kratom. They're going to join the gym. They're going to start eating healthy. They're going to start doing this, start doing that. And that's just a recipe for failure. Your success of actually coming through in that is very slim. So I'm in a different position to where I've already established all those things. So when it comes to quitting Kratom, I'm not rebuilding at the very bottom. I'm already established that plateau to where it's easier for me to rebound.
When you started Kratom, were you sober from everything else? Had you been sober for a while? Were you still using other things? Just curious where you were in life then.
Yeah, at the time, me and my girlfriend were drinking regularly, and I hate alcohol with a passion. Alcohol is something I've struggled with too. I don't even like it that much, but because it's just regularly available and because it's so socially acceptable when everybody's doing it, I just fall in with my addictive mindset. I just fall into that routine. And so Kratom, like a lot of the Kratom users, they just go from one addiction to the next, right? And for me, it was the same. So I was addicted to alcohol by any means, but I was drinking multiple times a week. And not
drinking
a lot.
Regularly, okay.
But I was still had that addicted mindset where, I got to have a drink or two at the end of the day. So Kratom really stopped me totally from drinking alcohol. And I stopped smoking weed as well. I didn't abuse weed, but again, because my addicted mindset and because it's available, I just do it because it's there. So yeah, that was kind of that at the time. So I started using Kratom and I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped doing weed, and Kratom really puts me into that opiate mindset. And at least for opiates for me,
for sure.
I think a lot of the other listeners out there, Kratom and opiates, there's really two modes of operation when you're on opiates. You're either in this, at least with Kratom too, where you're in this fog mental state to where you came down from your high, or you're in a euphorical high that lasts for a little bit of time, and then you go into that kind of zombie-like mental headspace to where your emotions are dumbed down, your mental state is dumbed down. And so you're operating in these two modes constantly throughout the day. And that's one of the things that I really hate about Kratom in opiates in general, is how it really shuts down your hormone levels. It shuts down your emotional state. You only experience 2 or 3 different emotions.
Yeah, it just numbs you out.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I hate quite a bit about the drug.
So you started in 2021. You used the extract shots. When did you get to the point where you're like, I know I need to quit this, and how did that go?
Yeah, great questions. I started out I didn't know about all the different strains. Of course, I found out Mangdao Red, that's the more opiate-like feeling, so I ended up doing that one quite a bit. But I started doing the white and the green, which for me gave me some level of anxiety for whatever reason, but I still kept doing it. So I dabbled in that, and then for about a year. And then after about that year point, like everybody, they wake up one day and they're like, I don't feel like doing it. And then you start to feel physical withdrawals. You feel like the restless edge. You have the little hints of an opiate withdrawal at a very minimal stage. And so at that point, I'm like, and I knew on the back of my mind, obviously, if you abuse the substance, you're going to pay for it in one way or another. And you're going to get physically and mentally addicted to it. There's just no way around it. And that's what they want. That's what the government wants. They want to keep us dumbed down. It's not a coincidence that every gas station you go to, every 30 feet in every direction you look at, you can buy the shit when it's ready, available. It's there for a purpose. I'm in Montana where there's a marijuana dispensary, literally 2 of them on every single block in every direction you go to. Kratom's no different.
It's the same in Maine.
Yeah. And so, I got to that 1 month, that 1 year mark. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to quit down. I'm going to taper down. And I was doing a lot of the pills. I like the extract pills. And then I would go back to the OPM shots. I forget all the names of the different types of shots, but I've done them all. And I would do up to 2 shots a day, and then I would get clean for a little bit, and then I would go back to it. And it's just, again, it's really difficult because for me, I'm naturally like not a procrastinator. I already have stuff going on. I can go through my whole day just being productive and not want to use anything. The thing about Kratom is I can go through my whole day and be productive, but then I can have that little shot of Kratom that's going to give me that little boost that's going to make things even more tolerable, even more exciting to get me throughout the day. So it's just a little pep. So that's really the evilness of it, is that it seems benign, but at the same time, it's actually very seducing and very evil in so many respects.
Insidious is like how I would describe it. It's just it creeps in, and it's hard. It's real hard to break that habit. Have you been able to fully abstain now and get away from it completely? How's that look like?
Yeah, so I don't count days. I'm one of those who can't count days because it backfires on me. It's like a mental thing.
That's cool.
It's been a couple months, and then I would say about a month ago, I did a shot, and man, it just hits you like a brick, man. And then to think I was doing 2 shots before, I do 1 shot now, and then I feel it all the way through that day until the next day. And to think I was doing 2 shots, like you're just really, and again, I'm 255, so most average people, 180 pounds, 5'7", 5'8", whatever, they're doing 2 shots a day. That's 4 times what I'm doing. So it's just,
dude, I could do 4 to 6 of them and take 30 grams on top of it. So
that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. And it just
sick. Like I was in this state of either withdrawing or sick from taking too much. I could never, like at the end, I could never get the dosage.
Yeah. And so with me, it got tricky because, again, I like to exercise a lot. And so I have to eat a strict diet to compensate for that exercise. And so any Kratom addict will tell you they schedule their doses around their eating schedules, right? So you always want to take it on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
You don't want to take Kratom after you've already eaten because you diminish the returns and so on and so forth. It got to the point where it was really affecting my food schedule. And so I didn't like the idea of having to not eat just so I could get high. And so there was just a lot of drawbacks in that sense too. And I didn't like the idea of always being emotionally dumbed down. It made me very irritable. It turns you into a robot, at least for me. You become very apathetic. You don't relate to people. It's all about you. It's a very selfish drug, I think. Most drugs are, but especially opiates.
It is.
Because you can literally that's your best friend. And for me, it's worse because I live alone in Montana in the mountains and stuff. By choice, I enjoy it. But having that tool at my disposal, if I'm left to my actions, it can really turn me into something bad because I can just completely shut off from society and be totally okay with it and just take Kratom as my best friend that gives me that comfort or whatever and be totally okay, which obviously is the last thing you want to do. And in this life, we're social people. We're meant to interact with people. We're not meant to be locked up on little islands in our own little head. And Kratom does that for me. And so that makes it very much more scary too. You listen to all the people who say Kratom's great at being able to feel normal and comfortable doing absolutely nothing but just sitting there and wasting time. And that's very true.
Oh, yeah, totally. What does the future look like to try to ensure you don't fall back into the Kratom trap or get back involved with harder drugs?
Yeah, I fully support those who go to NAs and AAs, and there's Kratom support groups, and they're not for me. My mom had me committed to a mental asylum when I was 18. She thought I was suicidal, and I was at the time, and they pumped me with a bunch of benzodiazepines and antipsychotics, antidepressants. I was probably on 7 or 8 different pills and turned me into a zombie. But during that time, I had to go to so-long drug rehabs and that was my first real exposure to listening to people with real problems, people who come from really difficult backgrounds. And yeah, I came from a really shitty background, but compared to some of the people I listen to, there's no comparison. And so when I listen to people who have it really, really bad, they need support groups like that because they're on the verge of some really horrible stuff. For me, it's just never really been very beneficial. And I've gone to the AA meetings and I've done all that stuff and done all the talks, and that's great. And a lot of people do need to do that stuff. They need that regimented routine to stay focused and stay on their program. I don't need to do that. I just do it in my mind. But I just stick to what I know best. And for me, again, if I'm left to my own devices, I can very easily fall back into that trap. But as long as I'm staying productive, again, I've already built a pretty solid routine throughout the day. My job keeps me busy to where I love my job quite a bit, making healthy six figures, no problem. So that consumes a lot of my time. And so I'm involved with that quite a bit. And so staying busy throughout the day, being productive, creating lists, doing things that generate those natural dopamine hits, whether it's cleaning your house, cleaning your car, doing those things, as opposed to just taking the simple false dopamine hit like Kratom. So every single day is a battle. Every moment is a battle for me. Some days are better than others. Some days I give in, but I would say 99.9% of the time, that's my routine. And for everybody, but I don't like pharmaceutical drugs. I think they're more evil than stuff like Kratom, big pharma and stuff. But occasionally, if depression with anhedonia from Kratom, which I get quite a bit, pretty hard. I don't know about you, but depression, Kratom can make me very depressed for whatever reason. If I
super depressed.
And smoking a little bit of marijuana once in a while helps with my depression. It's not for everybody. I don't like marijuana that much at all. I don't like the way it makes me feel, but it does help me. If it's between taking a pharmaceutical drug or taking marijuana, then I'll do marijuana before I do the big pharma. So those are just some of the little things that I do. And again, having a very strict diet, working out every single day, that plays a big role in the physical aspect of it too. So sweating out all those toxins. I sit in the sauna multiple times a week. And so that plays a big role into it as well, as far as your physical state, because if your body's clean, then your mind is going to be clean as well. So getting your body clean.
Would that be your like top tip to someone that's looking to get clean off of Kratom, is to build up a good, solid, healthy food and workout routine?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. And listening to all the testimonials, again, retouching back what I said earlier, is that a lot of times people who fall into Kratom, they don't have those routines. They don't have those healthy habits already established. And so when you have someone who has been on Kratom for a while and then they wake up and say, okay, I want to stop taking Kratom, but I also want to get my life together in other respects too. I want to get a gym membership. I want to start eating healthy. And again, doing all three major life changes at the same time is a recipe for disaster. Your success rate's going to be not very great, right? My suggestion, maybe it's a little counterintuitive, but look at, if you want to get clean from Kratom, get a calendar and mark off 2 months. The first month, begin to taper a little, but go and get that gym membership. Go and start working on a healthy diet. Get into that habit of putting on workout clothes, getting in a car, driving to the gym. That's the hardest part of going to the gym. That's not, anybody who goes to the gym will say 90% of the hardest part of the gym is just getting there, right? And get into that routine of what that feels like. Start developing that healthy habit, that healthy routine of, okay, I'm going to go to the gym today. I'm going to go work out, even if it's small. Start working on a diet. I'm going to eat healthy one time today, and then work up to I'm going to eat twice today, and so on and so forth. Try that for the first month. Start to develop that habit. In that second month, start tapering down with Kratom while you're still going to the gym, while you're still eating healthy, while you're cleaning up other areas of your life that you need to fix. I listen to so many testimonials. They're like, oh, I started doing Kratom, and then I quit cleaning my house. I quit doing the dishes. I quit doing this. I could not do that. So if you're in that state, that's a pretty low state. Well, start developing the habit of being able to clean your dishes and then stop. Because I tell you what, if you just stop Kratom, you're not going to have the bunch of energy and motivation to go and start cleaning your house and go to the gym. It's just not going to happen.
I always say too, start with making your bed. If you get up in the morning, make your bed. And then one way to just bring a little bit of initial order to your day and go from there.
And another thing too is plan out your day in advance. I use the Note app and create a little checklist, but start off small. Start off with one or two things. Like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to clean the kitchen. Tomorrow I'm going to clean the bathroom. Make a little checklist. And studies have actually shown that when you create checklists, and every time you go and hit that checklist and you go and physically make hit that box, put the X in the box, that's a dopamine hit. You actually generate a small dopamine hit. So if you have 10 items on that list, that's a guaranteed 10 dopamine hits right there. So that's another suggestion I would make, is plan out your schedule a day in advance. And so you're not just going into it blindly. And so you have some type of routine, have some type of mental state that you're.
Yeah, definitely. Make a plan of some sort is what I always like to say.
Yep.
Cool. Cody, this has been a really good conversation, I think, and interesting to hear about your journey through substance abuse and addiction and recovery. Before we wrap up today, is there any other topics you wanted to talk about or anything you wanted to mention to the community or anything like that, or any questions for me?
So this for the community. I've been asked before, what would you tell somebody who's thinking about doing Kratom? And I'll say this for the listeners. I don't want to demonize Kratom at all. I think it's a plant that should be respected. If you're just someone who likes to get high and likes opiates, stay away from Kratom, because more than likely, unless you're okay with getting hooked on it and you're okay with abusing it, more than likely you will get addicted to it. And it's really difficult because, again, it's everywhere you look. And so your land of milk with honey is only a 30-second drive away to the nearest gas station. So like you're going through withdrawals. It's not in the past when I tried to get heroin from my dealer, where I have to find the dealer. I have to go get cash. I have to set up a location to go meet him. I have to call him 1,500 times, and it's incredibly difficult. You don't have to do none of that with Kratom.
And then he tells you he's going to be there at 5, and then it's 8:30 p.m. and you're still sitting in a parking lot and never know if he's going to show up. Then he shows up and he shorts you.
Exactly. I want to ask you just real quickly. I think I've heard your story before, but I think you just said you were doing multiple shots a day. How long did that go for? That can get very expensive, obviously.
Yeah, so for me, it didn't start there, but like after about a year or so, I got on it daily. And then at first it was like I just buy one, and then I'd like use capsules or powder. But eventually it was like a year. It was a lot of money. And then what I would do is I'd get clean for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. The 3-week mark was always the worst because like I can get through the physical shit because I have been through all that nonsense with Oxy and all that crap. It still sucks and it's terrible. But anyways, I get through that. But the problem is the depression after 2-3 weeks, and the anxiety would always get me. So I would like over a 2-year period, I'd do that. Then I'd relapse for a month. Then I'd do it again. Then relapse for a month. And I went through, I would say a good year. And then that year or two where I was like every couple weeks on, every couple weeks off.
Mm-hmm. And so what was there a final
fun
thing?
Stuff.
Was there a final thing that this finally said, okay, I'm fine?
Yeah, the final thing was like I got so sick of being like either in withdrawal or making myself sick from taking so much Kratom, and I found myself in a liquor store one day about to buy a giant bottle of whiskey, and I knew that if I bought that bottle of whiskey, it was like I think I would have been dead. I literally would have. That was it. Like I was going all out into hard drugs and alcohol again. So by the grace of the universe or God or something, I don't know, I'm not a religious person, but anyways, something happened where I was like, I put the thing down, I walked out of the store, and I knew I needed to go see my therapist and see my doctor and just get shit. I knew I couldn't do it on my own and I needed help, and that's what I did.
Nice. How long ago was that?
It was a year at the end of April, so a little over.
Nice. Cool, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, thank you. Cody, it was really nice getting to talk to you today. I'm sure the listeners will enjoy this episode. And with that, I think enjoy the rest of your weekend and keep your Kratom free.
Thanks. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Kratom in the headlines. Hey, everybody. This is Jacob with this week's Kratom in the headlines. So I've got 2 different resources or articles for you this week. Essentially, one is a video link and the other is a written publication, but they're both about the same story. Essentially, in New Jersey, there's currently a law at the state level called CJ's Law that is being proposed. It is a bill that would essentially schedule and criminalize Kratom in the state of New Jersey. So essentially, some of the reporting reads, when CJ Hollowich died from cardiac arrest after taking a mixture of Kratom and Adderall while awaiting arm surgery, his mother contacted her state representatives and sought a legislative change. So essentially, CJ's Law, which is the informal name for Bill A3797, emerged. and it continues to move forward through the state government and is currently on a path to potentially make Kratom illegal in New Jersey. It notes what Kratom is, how it's used, and notes Assemblywoman Jessica Ramirez put out a press release where it said it's an unregulated. It can lead to toxicity in one's organs, failure, respiratory functions, and a myriad of other concerning symptoms such as sleeplessness, delusions, and aggressive withdrawal reactions. So it would criminalize the manufacture, sale, and possession of substances containing kratom, and it essentially transferred from the Assembly, State, and Local Government Committee on June 24th, which is when this started getting a lot of attention. It notes who the co-sponsors are and what's next for it. Basically, I guess they do various readings, and that's how bills advance. It's on to the third reading and vote, which will essentially determine if it moves for ultimate approval and ratification by the state government and ultimately signing by the governor. It also notes that the American Kratom Association, that is in opposition to this and would push for something similar to the laws that have been passed in other states and are being debated somewhat in various state legislators, and I believe even at the federal level. The podcast is essentially, we never have advocated for a ban. I don't think any of us are personally for a ban. So I'm not, and we would like to see more common sense regulation that protect consumers that would be drafted from a neutral body, if you will, not a body of lobbyists and manufacturers like the American Kratom Association. So anyways, there's typical debate when these things come up online. Some people super against it that are happy about the bill, other advocates that are unhappy about the bill. There's been some dragging through the mud of CJ's mother, as well as people dissecting the toxicology report of this person who unfortunately passed away from kratom. The autopsy was pretty clear. While he didn't only have kratom in his system, that is what ultimately killed them, is what the coroner, who is qualified to make those type of judgments, had essentially come to determine. So that's Kratom in the headlines this week. Give it a watch and or a read, and keep it Kratom free.
Resource of the week. I have a guest with us, Ramy, who was on an episode a couple weeks ago, and he's going to tell us about a new meeting that's emerging in the community. Ramy, tell us about this new meeting.
So, new meeting we have. This is going to be on Sunday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. It's going to be a pretty open format. It's with the There Is a Way Out meeting group, same link as those. It's going to be me and myself. Not me and myself, but it's going to be me and Jake. It's going to be a great way to calm yourself down when you get those Sunday scaries right before having to go back to work on Monday.
The group, this is with the Facebook group, the same meeting. They have 8 o'clock meetings on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So it's the same Google Meet code. It's going to start this Sunday.
This Sunday.
7th of July?
That's correct, 7th of July.
So I knew there was some debate about whether or not to make this a feel-free specific meeting versus a Kratom general meeting. And how did you guys end up? What way did you go?
So I'm definitely still open to doing a feel-free only meeting, just because that has exploded. The WhatsApp that we have is so many new people, and it's such a difficult. It's Kratom, no doubt about it. It is something weirder going on in there. We don't know what it is, but the relapse rate's pretty high. But for this meeting, I thought general would be a little bit better because of the time slot.
One last question. You want to talk about the WhatsApp group and how that helps people?
Yeah, the WhatsApp group, that started, I think it started from you and one of the people here. Yeah, Cooper. He started that whole WhatsApp group, and there was 10 people at the beginning, or maybe 8. And I probably joined at around 18, and there's 140 now. So it is an awesome place. We haven't had any crazy people infiltrate it. It's just sweethearts. I can't believe that, honestly, but it's just been a bunch of nice people, and we have so much information on Feel Free now and Kratom in general, but Feel Free and how to get through it. Every single day, it seems like we have a new person who's on, makes 2 weeks or makes a month, and it's really beautiful to see. And also the people who come in they had a week and they're back at day one, as many times as it takes. No one's judgmental there. Everybody is just so loving and helpful. I love that place, and it's going to always be special to me. So I highly recommend, if you're struggling with Feel Free, come on into that.
If you're interested, just email me at kratomsobriety@gmail.com or go to the Quitting Feel Free subreddit. And a lot of the moderators there are also moderators on the WhatsApp group, and you can get connected.
All right, brother.
Be at the meeting 8 o'clock. When you're listening to this, it'll be tonight.
Yeah, tonight. Jake will be hosting, I think. Yeah, this is his first solo meeting. We're going to have a blast.
All right. Until next time, keep it Kratom free.
Yes, sir.